American sailors were asleep. Families were eating breakfast. No one knew that within minutes, history would change forever. December 7th, 1941. Across the Pacific Ocean, a deadly Japanese strike force was moving silently toward Hawaii. Its mission was simple: destroy America's Pacific Fleet and force the United States out of World War II. But instead, this attack would awaken one of the most powerful nations in history. In 1941, the world was already burning in the flames of World War II. Germany was conquering Europe. Italy had joined the Axis powers. Britain was fighting for survival. But across the Pacific Ocean, another empire was rapidly rising. That empire was Japan. At the center of Japan's military strategy stood one man, Isoroku Yamamoto. Yamamoto was considered one of the greatest naval commanders in Japanese history. As a young officer, he fought in the famous Battle of Tsushima. Japan won a historic victory against Russia, but Yamamoto was badly injured and lost 2 fingers. Decades later, he would become the architect of one of the most shocking military operations in modern history: the attack on Pearl Harbor. Why Japan chose war? By 1941, Japan had already expanded across Asia. It controlled Korea, Taiwan, and large parts of China. But expansion required one thing above all else: oil. Japan depended heavily on imported oil to power its navy, air force, factories, and war machine. The United States, Britain, and the Netherlands became increasingly alarmed by Japanese aggression in China. In July 1941, they imposed severe economic sanctions on Japan. The most devastating move was the American oil embargo. Almost 90% of Japan's oil supply was suddenly cut off. Without oil, Japan could not continue a long war. Japanese leaders believed they had only 2 choices: either surrender their ambitions or seize the oil-rich territories of Southeast Asia. The Dutch East Indies, modern-day Indonesia, had massive oil reserves. British-controlled Malaya was also strategically important. But there was a problem. To reach those territories safely, Japan needed to secure the sea routes across the Pacific. And standing directly in their path was the American-controlled Philippines. If the United States intervened, Japan's supply lines could collapse. That meant one thing: Japan would have to neutralize American naval power before expanding further. America's strongest naval base in the Pacific was located at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Destroying that base became Japan's top priority. Yamamoto's dangerous plan. Ironically, Yamamoto himself did not want war with America. He had studied in the United States and even served as a naval attaché in Washington. He understood America's enormous industrial strength. He reportedly warned Japanese leaders that Japan could win battles for 6 months to a year, but after that, he had little confidence in victory. Still, once Japan chose war, Yamamoto was ordered to prepare the attack. The target was the island of Oahu in Hawaii, home to Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was heavily protected. Ford Island sat in the middle of the harbor, surrounded by warships, airfields, and defensive positions. A traditional naval attack would likely fail. So Yamamoto planned something bold: a massive surprise air attack launched from aircraft carriers. Japanese pilots trained for weeks using detailed models of Pearl Harbor. Every bomb run and torpedo attack was carefully rehearsed. The operation would be led by Chuichi Nagumo. On November 26, 1941, the Japanese strike force secretly departed from Isoroku Island. The fleet was enormous. It included 6 aircraft carriers, 23 submarines, around 30 support ships, 414 aircraft. To maintain secrecy, the fleet avoided normal shipping routes. Wireless communication was restricted. The ships even traveled in zigzag patterns to avoid detection. Their journey across the Pacific covered nearly 5,000 kilometers. America receives warnings. One of the most controversial parts of the Pearl Harbor story is that the United States received multiple warnings before the attack. American intelligence had already broken parts of Japan's diplomatic and military codes. Some Japanese messages were intercepted and decoded. U.S. officials knew tensions were reaching dangerous levels. Yet, no full emergency alert was issued at Pearl Harbor. Some warning messages were delayed. Others were underestimated. By December 1941, many officers simply failed to recognize the danger. That mistake would prove catastrophic. The morning of December 7, 1941, the Japanese fleet stopped about 370 kilometers north of Oahu. The attack was ready to begin. Japanese pilots understood the mission could be suicidal. Many wrote farewell letters to their families. Some cut locks of hair and fingernails as keepsakes. Then they climbed into their aircraft. Ironically, the first shots connected to the battle came from the Americans. Before dawn, the destroyer USS Ward spotted a Japanese midget submarine attempting to enter Pearl Harbor. The Americans attacked and sank it. A warning was immediately sent. But once again, commanders failed to react urgently. Meanwhile, the Japanese air attack was already on its way. The first wave launched at 6:15 a.m. The second wave followed at 7:25 a.m. At 7:02 a.m., American radar operators detected incoming aircraft north of Oahu. But officers mistakenly believed they were American B-17 bombers arriving from California. No alarm was sounded. The Japanese had achieved complete surprise. At 7:53 a.m., Japanese pilots received the famous radio signal. Tora! 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 Tiger! Tiger! The code meant total surprise had been achieved. Seconds later, bombs began falling on Pearl Harbor. The sky above Pearl Harbor exploded into chaos. Japanese aircraft split into separate attack groups. Some targeted airfields. Others attacked the battleships anchored around Ford Island. The first strikes devastated Wheeler Field, one of the major American air bases. Rows of American aircraft parked wingtip to wingtip were destroyed before they could even take off. Other airfields, including Hickam Field and Ford Island, also came under attack. Many American pilots never had the chance to fight back. Japanese torpedo bombers flew low over the water and released specially modified torpedoes into the harbor. At the same time, heavy bombs rained down from above. The American battleships became the primary targets. Then came one of the deadliest moments of the attack. The battleship USS Arizona was struck by a massive bomb. The explosion ignited ammunition magazines inside the ship. A giant fireball erupted into the sky. The Arizona sank with 1,177 crewmen trapped aboard. Nearby, USS Oklahoma capsized after multiple torpedo hits. 429 sailors died. Other ships across the harbor were heavily damaged. Smoke and flames covered Pearl Harbor. America fights back. Despite the shock, American resistance slowly began to organize. Within minutes, anti-aircraft guns across the harbor opened fire. Among the defenders was Doris Miller. Miller was a cook with no formal gunnery training. Despite this, he operated an anti-aircraft machine gun during the attack and fought bravely against Japanese aircraft. His courage later earned him the Navy Cross, making him one of the first black American heroes of World War II. Some American fighter pilots also managed to get airborne and engage the attackers. But the Japanese had overwhelming momentum. By 8:50 a.m., the first wave withdrew. Then, at 9 a.m., the second wave arrived. Fresh Japanese aircraft struck airfields and ships once again. By 9:45 a.m., the second wave also departed. In less than 2 hours, Pearl Harbor had been devastated. Japan's biggest mistake. At that moment, Japan faced a crucial decision. Vice Admiral Nagumo could launch a third attack. Such an attack might have completely destroyed Pearl Harbor's fuel storage tanks, repair facilities, and submarine base. Those facilities were critically important. Pearl Harbor contained around 650 million liters of fuel. Destroying those reserves could have crippled American naval operations in the Pacific for many months. But Nagumo feared an American counterattack. His fleet was also running low on fuel, so he ordered withdrawal. That decision became one of the most debated moments of World War II. Even more importantly, America's aircraft carriers were not present during the attack. USS Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga were all away from Pearl Harbor. Those carriers later became the backbone of the American Pacific Fleet. The Japanese had destroyed battleships, but they missed the targets that would truly decide the future of naval warfare. A nation awakens. The attack killed more than 2,400 Americans. Over 1,000 more were wounded. Much of the Pacific Fleet had been damaged or destroyed. But instead of forcing America out of the war, Japan achieved the exact opposite. On December 8, 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed Congress.
On his return to America following the Big Three Conference at Yalta, President Roosevelt reports to the American people
that the unconditional surrender of Japan is as essential as the defeat of Germany.
He called December 7th, a date which will live in infamy. Within hours, the United States officially declared war on Japan. Days later, Germany and Italy declared war on America. The United States had fully entered World War II, and from that moment onward, the balance of the entire war began to change forever.